My family and I have been hunting the same property in East Texas for over 10 years, and we've had some really creepy encounters with one of the locals. The property we hunt is timber company land. It is way off the beaten path down some dirt roads. No power, no running water, no sewer. There are very few people that live in the area. Only a few scattered hunting camps and some locals. Our closest neighbors live in a trailer about a mile away we've come to call the meth house. Now, I'm not sure if there really is any meth using going on there, but it would be hard to believe there isn't. This place has always been odd. There is a trailer sitting in the middle of a pine clearing. The brush is fairly overgrown around the trailer, almost as if the property were abandoned. There have always been broken down cars and other junk strewn throughout the front. Cow skulls and hip bones are attached to a pine tree in the front of the house, going up about 15 to 20 feet. It started out with maybe 10 and over the years has grown to about 20. For a long time, that was the oddest thing about the place. 2017, things started to get weirder. The front yard collection began to grow. A rotted out taxidermy of a wild hog was added to the skull tree. A doll's head was fixed with horns and some kind of gown and mounted on a stick by the side of the dirt road, which we called the Devil Baby. 3 tripods standing about 12 feet high each were erected around the trailer, made out of young pine tree trunks. One day we drove by and noticed that from these tripods hung the spinal column and rib cages of some animals, most likely deer. We originally thought that maybe they were using the tripods to hang and clean deer, but the same bones have hung for over a year, and somebody would usually want to dispose of the leftover carcass because the smell can get overwhelming very quick. So far we had no encounters with the residents and weren't even sure what they looked like. The place was creepy, but they seemed to keep to themselves. Until later in that season, we had 2 separate creepy encounters. The first happened to my good friend. He made a quick day trip with his wife up to the property to fill feeders and ride 4-wheelers. To get to his spot, he has to get on the dirt road and drive right past the meth house. His spot is only a few hundred yards away from the house. While they were doing their thing, they began to hear some strange noises. As he listened closer, he could hear fast, high-pitched gibberish back and forth between 2 voices. He described it as a lot of yips and yes and yees. They decided to get on the 4-wheeler and go investigate. They found 2 men squatted down. Picture Gollum from Lord of the Rings, besides a large mud puddle in front of the house. They were splashing and bouncing around while furiously and loudly speaking this gibberish. Once they noticed the 4-wheeler, they in unison stopped talking, if you can even call it that, and stared like an animal that has been spooked. My buddy took off on the 4-wheeler and didn't look back. The second semi-encounter happened to me and my brother. We were up there alone for the weekend and were relaxing by the fire on a pitch-black night after a long day's hunt. We began to hear something strange off in the distance. It was pipe organ music. It wasn't a recording of pipe organ music, but someone actually playing a pipe organ. There were missed notes and sporadic stops and starts. We laughed about how this seems like the setup in a horror movie and tried to ignore it. The music continued on and off for the next couple hours. Then all of a sudden we hear crashing through the brush. This was a very thick brush patch, 10 feet high and 100 feet deep or so. It is between our camp and the direction of the house. This didn't sound like the usual spooked deer, armadillo rooting around, or hogs coming down a trail. It was a crash made by something large and it was close. The rest of the night was quiet. No more organ music and no more noise in the woods. Likely, it was just a local little old lady practicing her organ for Sunday service the next morning, drifting over from another property. Likely, it was some animal that got spooked, crashing through the brush. But we sure were freaked. We make a point not to be up there alone overnight, and we keep a close eye on the house. About 10 years ago, I used to live in a tiny town. It had a really small population, maybe 3,000 people maximum. Everybody knew who everyone was, or almost. At 16 to 17, the owner of our local bar would let me get in. He knew who I was because I saw him often where I worked and didn't care that I was underage. It would have been a matter of months until I could go in legally anyway. Canada. So one night I go out with my sister, who is 22, and her friends. I noticed a guy around 40 looking at me from afar. My sister tells me he used to be her history teacher, Mr. Tony. He quit the year he was supposed to teach me, so he was never mine. I I figured he was staring at me because he wanted to know if I was one of his old students or whatever. He never talked to me. My sister, her friends, and I enjoyed our night out. Once I got home from the bar, I saw that I had a friend request on Facebook from the teacher. I accept without any second thoughts. I couldn't guess this guy could be a weirdo. Mr. Tony starts talking to me, asking what I do, where I work, and if I'm from out of town since he's never seen me. I tell him no, but he's never met me because he left the school the year that I would have been in his class. It wasn't an okay talk, but still weird because I was talking to an older guy at 2 a.m. There was no flirting at all. He then says he has something weird to tell me. You know, the night before this one, I had a dream. There was one of my Native American friends giving me a feather in my hand saying, "Set her free." When I saw you tonight and saw your feather tattoo on your arm, I knew it was meant to be. Do you want to come over sometime and drink some wine? The first thing I did was tell him right away I was underage and that I was sorry that me being out at a bar misled him. I thanked him for his offer but declined, of course. He tried to still chat, but I was exhausted and extremely creeped out. For a few days following that night, he still tried to talk to me, but I never answered. One day, he wrote me that he came into my workplace and didn't see me and was disappointed because he hoped he would see me. I didn't answer and I blocked him. A few months after that, there was a big event at a local beach for Canada Day. It was open for people of every age, so I went with my friend. We were sitting at a table behind a canteen, and there was nobody around us. I noticed Mr. Tony with another dude walking in our direction. He was clearly drunk and really excited about seeing me. His friend starts talking to the girl I was with, and Mr. Tony does the same with me. I tell him right away to leave me alone and start to walk away from the table that I was at. As I began walking, I turned around and saw that he was following me, but my friend hadn't noticed I was going away. I start walking back to her when he stops me. I was blocked by him. Behind me was the canteen. He asked me to kiss him. I told him no, and he asked again. I screamed at him something about being a pedophile since I was still only 17. At this point, my back was literally leaning on the canteen wall, and he was uncomfortably too close to me. He took his hands, put them on my shoulders, and said, "It's not pedophilia if you consent." I got really mad and disgusted, pushed him and ran to my friend, who was finally starting to realize that something was wrong. We ran away and lost Mr. Tony and his friend out of sight. We called my friend's mom to pick us up and told her what happened. She got to the beach as fast as she could a few minutes later. As I was about to get in the car, I saw him coming towards me saying he still wanted to chat. I told him to screw off. I never saw him after that and almost forgot about this story. Luckily, he never worked again in a school. I was 14 at the time of the incident. I was home with my brother, grandma, and my baby cousin. My brother had invited some girl over. Please remember that part because it is key to the story. My brother then introduced us to the girl. She looked normal but seemed a bit nervous. My grandma asked her some questions and told her if she and my brother needed anything to let her know. Anyways, my grandma told me to stay upstairs and allow my brother and the girl the privacy downstairs. Of course, me being the nosy little sister, I wanted to know everything, especially about the new girl my brother brought home. I snuck down the hall quietly and looked over the banister. I saw the girl looking outside the backyard and asking my brother questions like, "Who all lives here? Is this your guys' house? It's so nice." Hearing the conversation, I decided to listen to my grandma and go back in my room. I began to listen to music and felt the urge to look outside my window. I then saw a 2000 Chevrolet Impala parked outside our driveway. The door was wide open, and it appeared to be a man leaving our home with all of our tech items from our home and packing them inside the car. The feeling of dread came. "Yo, what's going on?" I said. Then the sound of loud talking was heard downstairs, and my brother said, "Please, you don't have to do this. Just let us leave if you know what's best." The girl responded. I hurried and ran to my grandma as quietly as I could to let her know what I saw downstairs and what I heard. She didn't understand the severity of what I was telling her and began to laugh, which made me kind of upset because our life could be in danger. I heard tires screech and saw the Chevrolet Impala speed down the street. I called out to my brother and he said, "Huh?" in a distraught voice. "What's going on? Who is that man outside?" I asked. He didn't reply. I walked downstairs and saw my brother shaking his head in disbelief, looking at where our TV used to be. The police came shortly due to my grandma calling them. We were later informed that my brother and the girl met for the first time that day off a dating app. And of course, they met at our home. The girl, of course, set up the entire robbery. She was just the decoy until her boyfriend came to rob us. But this part I'm about to say makes my blood run cold. The guy who robbed us held my brother at knife point and said if he didn't comply, he would stab all of us upstairs as a punishment for him getting in the way. The cops asked my brother to give them a description, but he didn't. Later on the same day, we then heard a truck park on the side of the house. Whoever was in it yelled and threw a glass bottle down and drove off. I'm not sure if it was the same man who robbed us, but it terrified me nevertheless. I'm grateful nothing happened to my brother though, or my family. It goes to show you that you can't trust everyone. So I live in a small town in western North Carolina and have my whole life. I worked at one of the 2 Bojangles in town. If you don't know what that is, imagine KFC or Popeyes, but the food sucks and there are fewer options. We serve mainly chicken, biscuits, and sides like mashed potatoes and green beans. It's really nothing special. I had worked there for almost 2 years, not despite the horrible pay, because I work with some amazing people and I love going there every day. All of this started about 2 weeks ago. We have a few regular customers who come in every day or on the same day once a week. They usually order the same thing every time and really only come in for the conversation. While we have amazing interactions with our regulars and some of our random customers, creepy encounters are not rare by any means. We have some pretty creepy people come in, usually people who are on drugs or with mental problems. We usually just tell them if they continue doing so, we'll call the police if they're being creepy. And they either stop or leave. However, the day that the man in the purple jacket, as we called him, came into the store, it was a very uncommon experience. He had never come in and ordered anything when I was working, but he did come in and order food from one of the other cashiers on the days I was off. Later on, it came to light that he had come in numerous times, sometimes every day for weeks at a time, and asked when I would be working again and had called multiple times to ask if I was there and got quite angry when he was told I wasn't. That day, we had seen him walk by the store or stand outside for a couple of days, smoking what we thought were cigarettes. Turned out, he was actually smoking joints outside the store, so my manager went out and told him to stop. He told her that he smokes because he has severe PTSD and depression and it keeps him calm, and she sighed and told him to at least walk behind our dumpsters and smoke there, but to clean up after himself. Then he came back in grumbling and complaining. A few minutes later, he pulled out his phone and pointed it out the window like he was taking pictures. I finished with the customer I was helping and went in the back to tell my manager that I was pretty sure he was either taking pictures or recording a video. By the time we got back up front, he was gone. A couple hours later, I was in the back around 9:30 washing dishes while my manager was doing her closing stuff so we could get out of there early. My boyfriend was sitting outside in his truck waiting on me to come out when we closed at 10. I heard the front door open and close, and knowing I was the only one who could use the register, I walked up front. I plastered a bright smile on my tired face and walked to the register. The man in the purple jacket was standing there wide-eyed, tucking half of an actual cigarette behind his ear. Now that I saw him up close, he wasn't bad-looking. He wore black ripped skinny jeans with chains hanging from the belt loops and a pair of red Converse. Under his fluffy purple windbreaker, he wore a dark gray and white polo shirt, with a small chain hanging around his neck, with a cross dangling from it. Ironic, I know. He had on a gray toboggan and had one AirPod in his ear, which had a diamond earring in it. He also had bright green eyes and eyelashes that could probably blow you away if he blinked fast enough. I stared at him in shock for just a moment before returning the smile to my face. I hadn't expected him to look like that up close from the way he looked out the window and how creepy my boss had said he was. I shook the thought out of my head and spoke. "Hey there, welcome to Bojangles. What can I get for you?" I spouted out my normal line for when new customers came in and waited for him to tell me what he wanted. Instead, he just stood there staring at me wide-eyed with a wide smile on his face. He stepped closer to the counter and slid his hand into his pocket, which made my heart jump into my throat. Was I about to get robbed? I stepped back just a bit, my heart pounding, and I watched his hand carefully. He finally spoke, and his voice shocked me with how deep and gravelly it was. It sounded like he had been gargling broken glass when he looked into my eyes and muttered, "You're even more beautiful up close. I've been so far away for so long, but now I'm finally face to face with you." And then he laughed and pulled a small envelope out of his pocket and placed it on the counter. Then, with one final glance down at my body and a small giggle, he left. My knees almost instantly got weak and I collapsed on the floor in a mess of tears. At the same time, my boss came up and asked me what happened. I was such a mess I couldn't even talk, so I just pointed at the envelope on the counter. My manager grabbed it and opened it up, dumping the contents out on the counter in front of us both. When I saw what was dumped out on the counter, my breath caught and I felt like I was actually going to pass out. On the counter in front of me were a small ring with a sapphire heart in the center and 2 small diamonds on either side, a butterfly necklace, a pair of gray underwear, and a black headband, sweet watermelon chapstick, and a light pink bubblegum scented lip gloss. You probably think that these are just random objects, until I tell you that these things have gone missing out of mine and my boyfriend's apartment over the past 2 weeks. Along with the stolen items, there was also a letter. It was short and absolutely terrifying. Your pillow smells like the ocean and your blankets smell like coconut. Did you know you talk in your sleep? After that, my boss went out and got my boyfriend, and he helped me to the truck and we went to my mom's for the night. The next morning, my boyfriend went out and got our clothes and shoes and essentials, and we stayed with a friend until we could find a new apartment. I quit my job and went and worked with my mom in the next town over. Everything seemed to be okay until we went to go get our furniture to move to our new place. When we walked in, we were met by our furniture being completely destroyed. Our dishes were smashed on the floor and our couch cushions were cut open and the stuffing was thrown everywhere. There was writing on the wall, the same words over and over again. I miss your skin. We left all of our stuff there except the air mattress we had in the back of our closet and turned in the key. Since then, we have got 3 dogs to keep us safe. Every time our dogs bark, I feel like I'm going to have a heart attack. Thinking he's come back, all of our windows have blinds that are never opened, and our bed sits completely on the ground. I never go anywhere alone, and I haven't been back to my old work since that night. He was arrested 2 days ago for trying to break into Bojangles at 4 a.m. when nobody was around. He admitted to breaking into our home and stealing my stuff. They found 3 more pairs of my underwear, 1 of my bras, 1 of my dresses, my old iPhone full of photos of me, and pictures of me in the shower doing dishes and sleeping next to my boyfriend at night. I went to college in Florida. After graduating, the first thing on my mind was getting out of there, so I made plans to move across the country and start a new life. 23 female at the time with all the options in the world. Everything was in order. I quit my job and a friend of mine agreed to take over my lease. I'd been living alone in a townhouse since my previous roommate graduated, so my friend moved into the other bedroom while I was preparing to move out. About a week later, it was 10 p.m. and the 2 of us were watching TV when there was a knock at the door. My friend got up to answer. He came back with a bag of food from a sandwich delivery place, assuming I'd ordered it. I hadn't. We thought maybe it had been delivered to the wrong address, but there was my name and address on the receipt. The phone number on the receipt, however, was unfamiliar. I called the number and somebody answered, but they never spoke. I could only hear the ambient sounds of a room and breathing. I searched the phone number and it appeared to be through an app. I convinced myself this was some kind of prank or misunderstanding. A few nights later, another knock at the door. My friend insisted on answering again, and I heard him telling a delivery person that this was a mistake. She doesn't live here anymore. No one ordered food to this address. The driver responded that they had taken the order themselves over the phone and spoken to a man who simply asked for the specials and ordered the first one. It was the same number on the receipt. I called again and again, and I heard somebody listening on the other end. The deliveries kept coming every few nights. My move was delayed for unrelated reasons, and the longer I stayed, the more it began to really scare me. Why would somebody do this? One time I called the number after another delivery, with my friend sitting next to me. The stranger picked up the phone as usual, but this time we heard a faint voice. She definitely still lives there. Then abrupt silence. I didn't recognize the person speaking, but I realized I shouldn't have been calling from my own number. I never called again. My friend tried, but the person on the other end never spoke aside from that one time. Eventually, most of the deliveries stopped, but somebody continued harassing us for months in various ways. That phone number began calling at all hours of the day and night, sometimes 30 calls in a row. They usually called my phone, but called my friend sometimes as well. If we answered, they would immediately hang up and call again. I began getting random friend requests on every social media platform, with messages such as, "Don't you remember meeting at the party last night?" when I definitely hadn't left my house in a week. Most disturbingly, somebody also started throwing eggs at the townhouse, which suggested that the stalker was local and knew where I lived. Maybe he was watching every time a delivery was dropped off. Maybe he was watching other times too. The only thing I ever learned was that he knew I hadn't moved. By this point, I was staying inside as much as possible, but you have to leave the house sometimes. I was terrified until I finally moved and blocked the number. My friend elected not to take over my lease, but I was always thankful he stayed with me those last couple months. This was about 8 years ago now, and I still don't have the faintest idea who it could have been. My former coworkers and a few college friends knew I was moving, but I couldn't think of anybody who would have a reason to keep track of whether or not I'd moved, and I didn't recognize their voice the one time I heard it. To this day, I refuse to answer unknown phone numbers or unexpected knocks at the door. Even contactless delivery gives me anxiety. I am always half expecting them to show up again. I was dog sitting, so when I got home every day around 2:30 p.m., I would take her out for a fairly long walk. I do think it is important to note that we took the same route at the same time every day. Other important notes: it is winter in Canada, so it's really cold, and there were not a large number of people around. Mostly just other people walking their dogs, but also a few people on their way somewhere or walking for exercise or whatever. It was not standing around hanging out outside kind of weather, and she is a small dog who is extremely friendly and would offer zero protection against the attack of two men. We took this walk through the park, which is really just a trail near my house, and while it is kind of isolated for the most part, you are within shouting distance of houses. However, there is an optional section of the path which leads into a more secluded area. Imagine the path as a straight line, and this section is a semicircle that connects it to both ends. Quite literally a detour. And while I am naturally anxious and paranoid person, the dog really enjoyed this part of the walk. I'm assuming because she could smell animals or wildlife. Probably rabbits and deer mostly, and also it is mostly taken by people with dogs. And you know how much dogs love to mark their territory, over places other dogs before them have done. One day, while we were walking this section of the path, a man in a very distinctive blue jacket appears, and while he gives me bad vibes, there is no interaction between us, and he is headed in the opposite direction, so it is fairly unremarkable. I have never seen this man before. The very next day, while we are headed to that area of the path, another man in a silver jacket passes us, but is also moving slower than normal. Because I have a dog, we stop every few feet to investigate and are not moving at a regular walking pace. However, this man stays close enough that he remains in my line of sight till he arrives at the bridge. The bridge is pretty much at the entrance to this detour. At the bridge, he stops and is just kind of waiting there. I think he was also on his phone, though I'm not sure. This man also gives me that awful gut feeling, but I am assuming that he is just waiting for someone and trying to not be worried about it. Weirdly, as we approach the bridge, he turns and starts walking back towards us. I'm feeling creeped the heck out now, and also dealing with some nausea issues unrelated to this, so we don't take the detour that day because I just want to be lying down at home as soon as possible. As we continue on, I glance back, and the man in the silver jacket is back on the bridge waiting, so I don't really know what the whole seeming like he was going to head back as we went across the bridge was about, but whatever. As we are continuing on our way, we run into that man in the blue jacket again. I've never seen this guy before. Now here he is 2 days in a row at the same time. He was looking at us and using his phone while walking. Anyways, we just keep moving, and he is headed towards the man on the bridge. This pretty much concludes the first interaction with these men, and really, it's easy to explain it all away as me being overly paranoid and them being normal people, not out looking to hurt or assault anyone. I continue to walk the dog at the same time every day. However, we now always skip the detour just to make me feel better, and we do not see the man in the blue coat again. But a week later or so, maybe longer, I am not good with time, but at least several days, the dog and I are on our usual walk. As we approach the bridge, who should appear but the man in the silver jacket? Again, just kind of waiting by the bridge. He appears from off the side of the path, and quite frankly, I straight up turn around and head back the way we came. Shortly before the bridge, the path has an offshoot that leads up behind my house, and so we head that way instead. This is probably fairly obvious to the man in the silver jacket, as we had passed that offshoot, and when we see him, we straight up just turn around. This day the weather was objectively not good. It was really cold and also snowing, so there were even fewer people around than is typical, and I wasn't willing to risk it. I firmly live by the motto, you only have to be wrong once to end up dead, and as such, I have no problems saying screw politeness, which has maybe saved my hide a few times, or I could simply be overly paranoid. It is 2016 and I'm attending college out of state in a small town. I knew nobody there, but over time made some connections. One connection was my dorm roommate, named Tori. Bless her, but she did not help me out at all in this situation. As a matter of fact, she actually made things much worse. She aided and enabled my stalker even. Maybe because she grew up in a small town where everybody trusts everybody so easily, and it's why she did not find the situation so odd at first. I wanted to mention this girl first because she played a big role in my stalking situation. I had been living with Tori for about a week and she seemed nice and decent. She suggested that we go and grab an early dinner together somewhere off campus because, well, the on-campus food is, to say the least, not great. About a 15-minute walk away is a fast food joint that we both agreed on, so we headed out that way. Right next to campus is a small liquor store and bar that we have to pass. It is quite seedy, but passing it during the daytime is no big deal for us. As we were passing the liquor store, I noticed a car that passed us slam on their brakes and do a damn near three-point turn in the middle of the very dead street. This car then whips around and into the parking lot for the store, nearly taking out Tori, who was a foot or two ahead of me. We keep walking, deciding that two small females confronting a possibly inebriated person would not be the best idea. As we are walking, though, I noticed the driver quickly get out and swiftly follow and step right alongside us. It was a man in his 60s who we'll call Brian. "Hey there, where are you little ladies off to?" We were headed to XYZ to grab food," Tori said. "Oh, cool. That's radical. By the way, my name is Brian. What is yours?" At this point in time, I was getting that pit in my stomach type of feeling. That instinctual something is not right here feeling. I've met some odd people in my life, but I never got that intense fight or flight feeling with them like I did with this guy. When he is talking, he is only looking at me, though my roommate is the one responding to him. "My name is Tori, and this is my roommate." "Oh, nice to meet you guys. Do you guys go to XYZ College? I used to work there as a professor. I'm guessing you guys live in the dorms?" Stupidly, she said yes and tells this nutjob our damn dorm, which is all female by the way, that we were staying at. "Ah, yes. XYZ dorm. You know the nickname I gave that dorm that people still use to this day. The 4 floors of horrors." Brian, and he proceeded to laugh like it was the greatest thing ever. I am now giving her looks of stop talking and let's go, because it is starting to get dark and I'm getting the straight up heebie-jeebies from this man, even though he is asking simple questions. I thought she was finally getting the hint by my looks and was trying to end the discussion with him. He, though, was not getting the hint and kept tailing us. He kept talking about how he is a big somebody and that he knows all these famous people and that we should be friends with him to get access to said famous people. He keeps trying to get personal information from us, ages, where we are from, and if we have boyfriends and social media. This is where my dislike for Tori comes into play. She answers the questions for herself and then proceeds to answer for me. "Yeah, I'm 18 and I'm from XYZ town and I have a boyfriend. She's 19 and is from this state and is new here, and she's also single." I kid you not, she said this. I gave this hoe of a roommate the foulest look I could muster. Like, okay, give him your information, but where on earth do you think it is okay to answer for me? Brian then proceeds to ask us to get into his car. Literally, he says, "So yeah, just get in my car and I'll take you wherever you need to go. Maybe after I can take you to my place and show you all the autographs from all the famous people I told you about." Before my roommate can finish the sentence of, "Oh yeah, that would be nice," I finally speak up and cut her off right away. "Thanks, but no thanks. It's not a far walk. Let's go, Tori." No, it's fine. Just get in the car. It's a really quick drive and a quick stop by the house. Just get in." Brian is now being more aggressive and panicking a little bit. You can tell by his tone. I just give him the go F yourself sort of look. "Before you go, can I get a hug?" he asked. to which she obliges and gives him one. What about you? Do I get a hug from my exotic out-of-state gal too? With his arms wide open and walking right at me, I sidestep this fool and walk fast away with Tori in my wake. I did not turn around or look back even when I heard him shouting, rude. She was fuming and kept on stating that I was cold-hearted for leaving him hanging like that. Looking back at everything that happened, I don't know why I did not call the cops or campus security. But at the time, I did think it would be a bit extreme. I wish I did speak up more though, so I do regret that. The whole first encounter took maybe 5 minutes, max. Days following this incident, my roommate became Facebook friends with this man. He sent me a request, which I denied, of course. He was able to send me messages still until I blocked him. His responses were the typical. Hey, what's up? Why won't you respond? And why are you ignoring me? Fine. Be a jerk. Which he all sent right after the denied friend request. Tori and Brian talked a lot, but only about one topic. Me. I did not find out until later that the conversations were really only about me. Earlier, I noticed when they texted or talked on the phone, she would seem frustrated, but I didn't want to pry and ask what was up. This all went on for a week or two. During this time, she would tell me to friend request Brian on Facebook because he was so distraught that I didn't friend him and because he would like to take me to dinner. He soon began begging and crying and asked my roommate to hand her a phone over to me so he could talk to me. I could hear him repeatedly saying, "Where is she? Where is she?" I told her to respond that I was in class. About 2 to 3 weeks pass and I hear nothing from her about him until she announces that he is on campus looking for me. She did not use the word us. She said specifically, "Brian is here on campus looking for you. He keeps asking me what your class schedule is and what building they are in so he can surprise you." Yes, you read that right. I immediately froze. "You did not tell him my class schedule, right?" I said. "Oh no, I didn't, don't worry, but he's been asking me this since we first met him, and he's been showing up on campus since then. You honestly should be nicer to him. He seems like a decent guy. I mean, yeah, he talks about you a lot, but it's no big deal," she said. I asked her what exactly they talked about that dealt with me, and it was everything. Literally every little detail that she could find about me on social media. She would run off and tell him. My likes, dislikes. She found on Facebook my past relationships, which she told him about, and he got weirdly irate about, like, how dare I not be some pristine virgin that never dated before. Giving him information about my family from social media, my body type, and anything that I mentioned to her about myself. She told me that was all he wanted to talk about, and that if she brought up another subject, he would turn it down and want to talk only about me. And the thing is, she did not see an issue with this. She thought it was cute and funny and that he was a nice older man, that he could not possibly be up to anything weird. I want to tell her off so bad, but that will not do anything to help my current situation. I do not mention that I would go to campus security and notify them about this man that keeps showing up, trying to find me and follow me, and tell them the conversations the man had with Tori. I showed them his profile of what he looked like and said that he apparently was at one time a professor, which he never was, it turns out, because I found out later he was a janitor but got fired for harassment. I come back later to my dorm to find my roommate seething at me. She says that Brian messaged her, saying that campus police found him walking around campus and looking in windows, and that they asked him to leave the premises. She asked if I told security, and I responded yes. But I also mentioned that security probably got red flags from other people who saw some random older man looking into the dorm windows, class windows, just loitering outside of classrooms in general. She was livid and said that I ruined her trust and his, because now he was mad at her for telling me he was on campus, because it was a surprise and that they could not be friends anymore. I wish I had asked for the screenshots prior to going to the campus police, just in case anything more happened, but it was pointless now with her being mad and against me. She did not talk to me for a bit, which I didn't really care about. I was prompted by others to move out and get a new roommate, but instead I just stayed with a good friend of mine in another dorm building. I did not see her or hear from this guy again. I moved out of the dormitory and I shared and did not see her much after that. So I grew up in the Republic of Ireland in a small town. The typical town where everybody knew each other, super friendly, perceived to be safe. My town is near the border to Northern Ireland, which is important to the story later. For anybody with unfamiliar regarding the history of Ireland, the North is still under British rule and classed as the UK. My neighbor, I'll call her Michelle, and I were friends, and we loved going to our local community center to swim. This one Sunday, when I was about 8 and Michelle was 9, we were allowed to walk there and back by ourselves. It was no more than a 10-minute straight walk in a populated area. Cars and people. Anyways, we got there grandly. We had a great time swimming, and then we had the idiotic idea to walk further down into the town before we took ourselves home. This again was a near enough straight road, about an extra 5-minute walk. We went to town fine, and we bought ourselves Mr. Freeze ice pops, 10 pence apiece, and we strolled around the tiny town center. I remember Michelle suggesting that we go to the pet store that was a bit of a mission away. Safe, of course, for a shortcut. The shortcut was behind the building works of a brand new shopping center being built in the town center. So, on we walked to the building site when out of nowhere this grown man approached us carrying what I can only now in my adult head describe as vaginal speculums. Honestly, that's exactly how I remember it. One in each hand, and he said, "Girls, come here. Do you know what these are?" He had a full-on Northern Irish accent. It definitely wasn't local to our own, and immediately I was scared. I recall Michelle and I both saying no and stepping backwards to get away back onto Main Street. He continued to move toward us, and then suddenly out of nowhere, this small 2-door blue car drove towards us with 2 women in it. The man fled. The lady said, "Girls, is that man hassling you?" I don't think we even spoke, and they said, "Hop in the car and we'll drive you girls home." I, of course, being the idiot that I am, went to get in. Thankfully for Michelle, she said, "No, we're fine. Our moms are around the corner." The women said, "Okay, as long as you're sure," and they left swiftly. I started crying to Michelle, basically saying, "Why did you do that? What if he comes after us on our walk home?" But I will never forget her saying, "Are you stupid? Those women had Northern Irish accents too." This is a story I come back to every so often throughout the years, and I always wonder what would have happened had we gotten to the car. Were they all in it together, or were we going to be trafficked through Northern Ireland into England? Were they just nice women trying to help? How could they have seen our interaction, though? It always creeps me out and messes with my head. When I was a teenager, about 14 to 16, I was in 9th grade and finally had a cell phone. One of those free Verizon phones that you had to wait until after 9 for free calls. I started dating a fellow freshman, but I was a young male teen, so I had other interests. I started receiving messages from a number I didn't recognize, but it was a local number, as the area code was 804 like mine. As the number texted me and let me know who they were, I thought maybe one of my friends was pranking me. It wasn't in their character to do such things. Our pranks were dumb like farts and nut taps. Even then, we barely pranked each other. The person texting me said their name was Aquaria. She sent a picture too. She wasn't the prettiest, but she was easy on the eyes, so I figured I'd entertain the conversation. She clearly knew my name and some other things like where I went to school and my age. I didn't think anything of it because school can be a place where your information is passed around like a piece of paper. Now here's where it got weird. This girl claimed that she wanted to be my girlfriend and that the girl I was dating wasn't right for me, and that she was the one. I had already had one stalker during my school days, but it was slightly more annoying than serious, so I thought it was her. But some things didn't add up to make me truly believe it was her. Over the next couple of months, the text died out as I stopped responding because it started to feel creepy. One day, I was walking the railway tracks and I got a message from the same girl again from a different number saying they saw me walking on the tracks. Now I'm starting to worry that somebody is keeping a close eye on me. The messages stop as soon as they start. Enter the MySpace days where this girl sends me a friend request and messages me about wanting to date again. She never told where she went to school, or how old she was, or anything other than her name. Still feeling weirded out, I decided to stop responding until my 10th grade year. I started receiving messages through text again at all times of the day and night. I didn't respond. And soon, the text stopped until 11th grade, and I'm dating another girl I started dating the summer before, and this time things got extra weird. She messaged my girlfriend and told her that she and I were dating, and she was leaving messages on my page so people could see, and they got disturbing. She was planning out her whole life. My girlfriend called me upset thinking I was cheating, but I told her the situation and I don't think she believed me, but she left it alone after I made some calls trying to prove I had a stalker, which kind of worked out. After that, I deleted her off my profile and managed to make it through a senior year without a single text. And to this day, I have no idea who Aquaria is. She knew too much about me. Like way too much. Where I hung out, my age, my name, the school I went to. It was almost as if she were lurking in the shadows watching my every move. Last night, my roommate and I made a last-minute decision to go night swimming at the river in our city. It was around 8 p.m., so there were still a few people hanging out in the area, but it was quite dark. About 15 minutes after we got there, I saw a man shining his flashlight, seemingly looking for something near where we put our stuff. I said, "Hey, keep an eye on that guy," to my roommate semi-loudly, and he obviously heard us and scurried away. I began to feel anxious, but I waited a little bit to say something to my roommate. Eventually I did, and we decided to leave. We packed our stuff up and began to walk up the staircase that leads to the parking lot, using our flashlights to see the steps, when I, out of the corner of my eye, saw a dark shadow dodge into some bushes at the top. I stopped and grabbed my roommate's arm and said, nope, and started walking back down the stairs. I told my roommate what I saw when we got to the bottom, and she said it was probably just a tree blowing in the wind. I started getting the strangest feeling in my stomach that I'd never had before, and I just knew that if we went up the stairs, something bad was going to happen. I stood at the bottom and began to shine my light up to the top, trying to see if I could see anyone, and sure enough, I saw the outline of a man for a split second. As soon as the light hit him, he ducked behind the bushes again. Obviously, I went into full-blown panic mode and started looking for other people that were there, hoping somebody could walk us to our car. Luckily, we found a couple not far from the steps, and they walked us to our car but seemed quite annoyed about it. When we got to the top of the steps, he was nowhere to be seen. A few hours after we got home, I got a notification on my neighbor's app, the Ring doorbell app that sends crime alerts for your area, that somebody was stabbed only a few streets away from where we were. I'm 100% certain that this guy's intentions were bad. I don't know if he was planning on kidnapping us or robbing us, but I just know something really bad would have happened if I hadn't been paying attention yet. We would have walked up those stairs. And I'm not sure if he was the person that stabbed someone, but that notification just scared me even more. I still feel sick to my stomach because of all of it. For reference, I live in the UK. As I write this, it is currently 3:30 a.m., and what I have just witnessed occurred between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. I live across the street from an elderly couple. I'd guess around 75 years old. They seem pretty normal from the outside, although I've never spoken to them. I usually see that their lights are out by the time I move to the bedroom to lay in bed for the night and not really sleep. Tonight I was lying in bed as usual, watching YouTube videos on my phone, when I heard what I'd guessed was the slamming of the boot of a car across the street. I saw the old lady getting into her car and driving away. This in itself seemed odd since it was usually the old man that would drive, and all the lights in the house had been left on. I decided to forget about it since she might have had some sort of emergency. I heard her drive back into the driveway around an hour later as she seemed to speed into it. She appeared to be in a hurry as she was pacing around the car fairly quickly until she disappeared into the house for a couple of minutes. When she returned, she was carrying a stepladder and some hand wipes. She placed the stepladder into the boot of the car and proceeded to use the wipes to wipe down all the windowsills on the front of the house, and once again sped off down the road. All of the lights in the house were still left on. I've been peering out the window for about 20 minutes now with no sign of movement in the house, which makes me wonder where the old man could be. I definitely recall seeing him earlier today, as he usually waters the front garden every evening. I don't know if I'm interpreting this wrong, but something about this just doesn't seem right. If anybody could offer some sort of explanation of this behavior, it'd really help clear my head. I'll update this post if she comes back. Update, 10:46 a.m. August 12th. I stayed up until just after 5 a.m. to see whether she'd come back or not, but nothing more happened up to that point. I have now woken up to see that her car is back, along with their other car that I couldn't see last night. They have a rounded driveway which isn't completely visible from the window. I assume the other car was behind the bushes. It's completely possible the old man had driven somewhere that night and she had driven to join him. I agreed that the explained behavior does seem like dementia. It is the most likely reasoning. For both cars to be now visible, I assume they are both in the house, and I will keep an eye on the house today for any sign of the old man. Update August 12, 9:38 p.m. I was out during the day today, and when I returned, neither car was in the driveway once again, with what seemed like a note stuck up on the porch window. I didn't want to walk up to the door in case somebody was in. I was heading out again for the evening, but as I was pulling out of the driveway, they both returned in the same car the old lady had been driving the night before, with the old man driving like he usually does. It's possible the other car had been kept in the garage the last night, as that's where I suspect it is now. I will keep a lookout for any funny business tonight. This happened about a month ago, and it's really been bugging me since. This will be long, so read at your own risk. Setting up the scene is important in my opinion. So, my family has a cabin that we've had since the 60s, and I've been going out there for my entire life, throughout the years though especially. It's nestled in a little town of less than 2,000 and surrounded by vast forests and farmland. You see cows everywhere and stray dogs who will let you pet them. You will see maybe 30 people in a day if you go in the little town of shops and small mom-and-pop restaurants. Definitely a small country town. Since I've been going here my entire life, I pretty much know everybody, or my family knows everyone. Men dress in Western clothes with big jeans and old flannel shirts, and belts with big-ass buckles. Women dress in jeans and tank tops with country factory logos on them. They're all nice enough but keep to themselves. So I'm driving up there one night to meet my parents, since they had gone down the night previously to open the cabin for spring. My boyfriend had also flown in so he could meet my family, who lived up there. I had been driving until it got dark, about a 2-hour and 10-minute drive from my house, and he had taken over driving around 10 p.m. There's also a little national park close by, about 15 miles in total of land, and since I had fallen asleep and couldn't give directions, he decided to log the address into the GPS. It took him through the back way through the park that I never drive through, so when he woke me up to ask where to turn since the GPS said he could go either way, it took me a minute to figure out where the heck we were. There were no lights anywhere, and we were the only car for those 15 miles. Long forests with tall giant trees on either side of the road, with a lonely deer or two in the woods to keep us company. I mentioned switching drivers because I remember that road, the entrance to the park, would lead directly to the intersection that would go through a small community up to the mountain my cabin was on. But it was prime leave a toy baby on the side of the road, and kidnap somebody when they check it out territory. It was dark enough and the forest was thick enough that we joked some cult members could be hiding out here. Heck, maybe they were. Needless to say, we decided stopping wasn't a great idea. We eventually passed through a small clearing and intersection, not the one we wanted, with a dinky concrete building on the side of the road with one light on, and a car pulled into the slanted gravel ground. My boyfriend drives forward and we see 2 people there. My gut immediately twisted and I started to feel sick. Sick enough to feel ice cold run through my veins and need a hand on my stomach. You never see people at night here. It was 2 kids, teen boys in fact, probably around 15. They were wearing city clothes, Nike shorts, and obnoxiously colored sports workout clothing and looked very out of place. They saw us coming and walked away from what looked like to be an old beat-up El Camino, probably a 1965. It's important to note that the paint was completely gone and it had a light brown dirt or rust covering the body. They waved and smiled at us, and that was what freaked me out the most. I didn't have a damn clue who these people were, and I knew a gas station that was right up the road. They could just walk there. I could see it past the road and overhead bridge. That building was also abandoned, so how was there a light on the wall? They walked out onto the road, almost blocking us from going forward, and my boyfriend had to slow down to not hit them as they continuously waved their arms and smiled at us, maybe saying something but I couldn't hear. I remember mine and my boyfriend's conversation going something like this. "Should we stop?" he asked, looking nervously at me with a hand on the gear shift. "No, absolutely not. Just keep driving," I said, clenching the door handle and double-checking it to be locked. "But babe, could they be in trouble?" "I don't care, I don't know them. My gut is telling me that we need to leave. That building is abandoned. It shouldn't have light. And man, their car is abandoned. Just drive, please." He quickly drove around them and slammed on the gas, trying to calm me down since the whole scene scared me in such a specific and bizarre way. Images of getting out of our car as somebody strange got in flew through my head. I looked behind us and they stood in the middle of the road with a cross between an angry look and a calm stare and didn't move from the road until we turned and couldn't see them anymore. Who were those kids? Why were they wearing city clothes? They looked too young to be driving cars even, and I knew for a damn fact that the car they acted like they owned had been there for months. I knew because I remember seeing it last summer when my dad pointed out the model, and I said how I wanted an El Camino someday. We finally made it out and found the intersection we wanted that led to the familiar gas station, and he didn't hesitate when I said I needed to drive next. About 10 or so minutes later we got to my cabin, half-heartedly laughing about it the whole way there. When I told my parents about it, they didn't reprimand us for not stopping. It was almost 12 a.m. by that time, and the night wasn't so bad that those kids would freeze, and they agreed with us the whole situation was so weird. Should I have stopped? Maybe. Can I change what I did? I can't. Did I feel comfortable stopping? Absolutely not. So, two teen boys who might have had ulterior motives with passing drivers, please stay away from us. This happened a couple weeks back in the UK. To some, this won't be creepy, I guess, but I thought this was the best place to share. I'm a very tall 45-year-old dude on medical disability due to renal failure, weak bones, etc. I wanted to make lunch rather than be lazy and order a pizza, and despite the pain caused by walking, I decided to walk the 30-minute round trip as part of my mandated exercise. I get to the local small store, masked up, and go grab some basics to make a quick meal. While I'm in there, I feel a sharp pain fly up my back, and then my left leg, and I start limping. Knowing that when this happens, I have 20 minutes tops before the pain gets too much, I go and get my stuff paid for. I leave, cross over the street, and sit on a public bench and let my pain fade a little bit. Once it did, I started walking again, only for two young guys in suits to come up to me wearing badges, identifying them as members of the Church of England, asked me if I was okay, and said that letting God into my life would stop the pain. I politely told them I'm fine. I just need to get home before it flares again, and big mistake. Tell them I'm not religious. I believe in what I like, but I don't anymore. I get told it's their job to save me in the Word of God. I start to walk off, but my leg flares up again and I start limping. These two guys follow me and keep trying to stop me, despite me saying to leave me alone, telling me that they need to help me. I get to my house, open the door, and they try to push into it. I stand in the doorway, now in agony, freaking out, and anxiety takes over. My retired neighbor sees them and comes over just as I lose it. I yell at them. This is private property. You are trespassing and making me feel unsafe. Screw off. They look offended, but my neighbor tells them to leave me alone. They storm off grumbling. My neighbor helps me sit and makes my meal and stays with me till I calm down. I called the Church of England and complained about my interaction, got an apology, and was told that the two workers will be retrained and kept out of my area. Not seen them since two different ones who asked how I was and then left me alone otherwise. I, 22 female, live in a brand new apartment complex on a nice side of town. My city is pretty safe in general. This is the first time I've lived alone, so even though it's a safe area, I take some precautions, which, including installing a Ring video doorbell, I have honestly never needed it in the 6 months I've lived here, as no unexpected visitor has ever come by. Until last night, that is. I was sitting at home alone with my dog working on some homework. It was nearly 8 p.m. and starting to get dark. At night, I have my Ring set up to alert me when any person is detected outside my door. I received a notification of motion at my door, but I didn't think much of it. At 8 p.m., people are still walking down the hall up the stairs. About 30 seconds later, I received several loud knocks on my door, and my Ring is pushed rapidly 3 times. At this point, I'm spooked and my dog is going nuts. I open up the app to see 2 men standing outside my door. I debated internally on if I should open it or not, but then decided it wasn't quite dark yet and my neighbors were home, that it would be safe to do so. I slowly opened the door, just enough to put my head out. The man nearest to me says that they are with the wreath committee, and complimented my wreath. He then went on to say that he was with an internet company and he and his partner were here to offer me a deal. Now, my apartment has a very strict no-tolerance policy for solicitation of any kind. We are actually told to immediately report that kind of activity, and there are signs posted all around stating that solicitation is prohibited by law there. I told the men I am happy with my current service and was not interested in switching. The man who spoke first continued to speak about the great deal they were offering. I continued to decline. He kept saying that he lived really close to here and that he would be happy to personally set up the service. He even offered to come inside and help me get started now. I declined once again, and he reiterated that I should give him a call if I changed my mind because he could be here in 5 minutes to help out. He handed me a business card and I tried to end the conversation again. He then tells me that he just can't walk away knowing I could get such a good deal, and I'm saying no to it. At that point, my instincts were telling me something was horribly wrong. I decided to take a more aggressive approach, and I asked him if he was aware that my apartment has a strict no solicitation policy. He said that he was aware, but that he cleared it with the management. My apartment has a very small management team, and I know every single one of them. I asked who he cleared it with, and he said that he cleared it with the guys on the golf cart, Mike and Will, and that Mike was a great guy. Now I knew it was all a lie. Our management team are only women here. There is nobody by the name of Mike or Will. In fact, only one man works here and his name is Joe. I say thanks, but I'm not interested, and closed the door and locked it loudly. I took a closer look at the business card he handed me. It had a logo and the name he gave to me, but the email was not a company email. It was a Yahoo account. The phone number also did not appear when I searched it up for the company. I decided to post about my encounter on the residents only Facebook page. A few other women commented that they had similar interactions tonight, but that they were given different names. The strange thing was none of the men or couples were approached. It was only women who they spoke with. They talked to my upstairs neighbor and my neighbor across the hall, and didn't speak to either of the men that live on the same floor as me. Everybody was given different names, and everyone was also offered vastly different deals. 2 women were told that they didn't have business cards to hand out. I thought it might be worth Googling this guy's name to see if anything popped up. Sure enough, the second result was a report on an offender registry. Turns out the man who spoke at my door has 5 felonies and has served several years in jail for various charges, including trafficking a controlled substance, theft by deception, and possession of stolen property. I knew it was him because there was a photo attached to the report. He is currently on parole until November. I'm not sure if I'm overthinking the situation because this is my first time experiencing something like this, but I know it didn't feel right. Maybe I'm just being dramatic or paranoid, but the entire thing feels more than a little bit off. I'm not sure if they were just scammers or if they were staking out places to rob, or worse. I reported it to my property manager nonetheless, who is investigating it today, but I am just a bit uneasy about the whole thing. If they do return, I'll be calling the police for sure. As of the time of me writing this, nothing else suspicious has happened, and I'm safe at the moment. I'll continue to stay vigilant. Be safe out there, you guys. As I am a Balkan guy living in Austria, the tradition of Krampus is not so new for me. We got similar traditions in Croatia, Serbia, and Bulgaria, Hungary, and most of the other countries on the Balkan Peninsula. But here in Austria, the Krampus shows and parades can get pretty violent. Not as bad as approximately 10 to 15 years ago, but still pretty tough in some nowadays rare cases. So, inspired by the southern neighbors, pyrotechnics are pretty common at Krampus shows and parades. It seems some groups spend more of their time and money on great pyro shows than other wooden, hand-carved, and all-unique masks. This happened in 2014 on the 2nd of December. In my village, there was a very large Krampus parade. The route, unfortunately, directly crossed my workplace in a restaurant. It was about 8 p.m. and our restaurant was filled with guests, mostly kids with their parents. I was in the office calculating my order for our supplier when I heard children screaming in fear. So I immediately rushed to the bar counter and saw 3 Krampus with horrible masks surrounding 2 small Turkish kids. Well, as a foreigner living in this country, I know that most people in rural areas don't really like foreigners, especially Muslims, unfortunately, and those kids were obviously both. One of the devil's minions, whose mask looked furiously angry, with long teeth and a long tongue sticking out, as well as large Capricorn horns, held the trident with some kind of Bengal fire attached to it. which filled the whole guest room with smoke and a sulfuric smell. I knew this smell very well from the football stadium. He wore thick black fur on his waist, and there was a heavy iron chain worn as a belt. The others had scary masks too, but the one with the Capricorn horns was clearly the scariest, plus the alpha of the group. All Krampus also have large cowbells attached somewhere on their costumes, and for a few years above the eye holes, they have had small red or blue LEDs for a glowing eyes effect. I looked back into the kitchen and called for Demir and Flamer, two cooks muscularly built in the same kickboxing club as me, to come and help de-escalate the situation. They nearly instantly showed up through the door, and without explanation, they knew why I called for them. We grouped up at the bar, where two female service employees crouched on the floor, made our way around the counter, and approached the scene. Many people, even grown men, just stood beside and watched as the three devils surrounded the children, who I later found out was her mother, was standing a few meters behind, shouting and crying at the men with masks. I grabbed the quote-unquote alpha on his shoulder, totally forgetting that I shat my pants when I saw them as a kid, and pulled him back half a meter. My friend Demir grabbed his trident, and my other friend blocked one of his friends, which made the third one back up. The alpha, if you will, started to scream below his heavy mask and used a bunch of swear words at large, and I could smell the alcohol through the holes in the wooden carved base. He tried to push me back, but Demir held his other arm and we pulled him to the exit, where the parade was still passing by. His friends rushed outside on their way and grabbed their alpha and pulled them into the mob of devils that was moving past our restaurant. Well, in Austria, Krampus needs to wear an identification number to minimize the chance of assaults on people, but all three of them had none. While Flamer and Demir went back inside to open all the windows, that freaking smoke burns in your eyes and throat when the fire is used inside a closed room. I went into the parade to find some kind of responsible person or police officer I could talk to. After a few minutes, and with the help of two girls dressed up as angels, they were part of the parade, I found the vice mayor of our village and told them what happened. Unfortunately, many devils had large Capricorn horns, and they were a trend at the moment, and my description fit too many devils and as we later found out, the following 2 years. After filing a report, I went back to our restaurant and ended my shift as usual. When I finished, as always, I left as the last one. I went outside and locked the door, lit a cigarette, and walked to my car a few corners away. I thought I heard the faint sound of cowbells in the distance, but I shrugged it off and moved on. On the left side of the street, there are buildings. On the other side, there is a field bordering a forest. I moved on to my car when I heard the sound of multiple cowbells not so far away that time. I froze again and concentrated on every sound I could hear. Somewhere near me, a cat hissed and searched through a trash can. At least I assumed that. I could hear a train passing the town and other usual night sounds. When I reached my car and pushed the button on my key, I clearly heard cowbells behind me. Behind me, there was only the dark forest. I stared frozen but could not see anything. I turned and opened my car door when suddenly a loud growl came out from the forest, and I saw 2 dim red lights at the first tree line, then 4, then 6, then 8, now 10. I squinted at the trees to make out some details, and after a few seconds there was no doubt that dark figures with glowing eyes walked out of that thicket into the field. I turned around and hopped into my car, put in the reverse gear and started the engine, rushed backwards onto the street and drove the heck out of there. I've never been home so fast. At least 5 devils stood in the forest trying to scare me. Or wasn't it aimed at me? I'll probably never find out, but after the incident in the restaurant, I doubt that it was coincidentally me they scared.